welcome to this episode of Tim Talks. And we're actually going from last month's cleaning up a few questions that we didn't get to, talking about story or suffering or any of those things. So we're doing that this week. I have 8th grade small group extraordinary leader, Richard. Richard, how you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Richard is actually known as the best dressed small group leader in the history of Element. Can we see the socks? I'm sure I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sure they match today. Can we see the socks? What do you have for socks?
I have Argyle socks on.
Rocking the Argyle with the green lining. I don't know if you could tell. It's green lining to match the tie.
Yeah.
That's impressive. That is impressive. So first question, what do you do when your friends don't want to listen to you when you try to talk about God? Let me pose that to you. Have you ever been in a situation like that before?
I have. I have friends, we all go through troubles and trials, and when some of my friends have gone through some trials, I've kind of mentioned about God and praying and talking to God and attending church to try and ease some of your pain. And they kind of brush it off, and you still have to keep counseling them and still be their friend, and at the end of the day, just keep counseling them, and as time progresses, they will, eventually come and worship and pray.
Absolutely. One of the key lessons I've learned just being a pastor is you cannot pastor anyone that doesn't want to be pastored. And so as much as we love Jesus and want to talk about Jesus, there's times where no one wants to hear that, and that's okay. And the Bible said, Jesus talks about that, where times like that's going to come. But that doesn't mean, one, you throw away the relationship. You still love. You could influence people for Jesus without using his name. And so you could show God's love and not necessarily have to reference it back to God. And so just be Jesus, and that's probably the best thing you can do. Another great question. These are great questions. What is your favorite story in a Bible about overcoming pain? Got any off the top of your head?
I do. The story about Joseph.
Good one.
How he was sent off to Egypt, and he was imprisoned, and he was at the bottom, and then all of a sudden he became a leader. He was like the second in command in in Egypt, and he ended up saving his family. So granted, he was in jail for over 10 years, but at the end, he ended up saving his family and saving them from famine. So that's one of the great stories about pain and how he overcame it.
That's great. My favorite is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was dealing with such emotional trauma that he was sweating blood, just because he couldn't his physical body couldn't handle that stress, that pain. And what he did in that time was he went to God, and just like Joseph, depending on God. Pain is inevitable, but how you deal with that pain is your choice, and just go to God with that pain. That's not cliche. Just practice going to God with that pain. How can I follow God if I can't believe in myself? That's a great question. It reminds me of a line from the movie Count of Monte Cristo that says, even when you don't believe in yourself, God believes in you. And so trust that it's not up to you. Nothing is up to you. It's really God. God, let me rephrase that. You have responsibility. There's things that you need to handle, but God believes in you. So I just want to encourage you with that. We had a question that I crumpled up, and that is, if you did not go to Arizona, are you qualified to say YOLA? No, you are not. Don't say YOLA unless you went to Arizona. I think that should be policy, right?
I can dig it.
How do you know when God speaks to you? Great question.
It is a great question. You hear that small, still voice in your head and your heart. And it's also one of those things, I give an example where it's like, you have to train yourself with continual prayer and worship. You'll eventually, that small, still voice grows louder and louder and louder, the more in tune you become with it.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I have nothing to add to that. Brilliant. Last question this week. How can you tell your story when you're afraid or ashamed to tell it to yourself? And I think you answered the question. In that question, you have to be comfortable in your own skin before you tell your story. You know, anytime you're revealing yourself, there has to be a level of security and comfort. And so just be patient, let God work with you through that. You know, God is into you talking about your scars, not about your wounds. So if you have a wound, let it heal. You know, we talked about that during last month. Let it heal and let it become a scar before you share it. Richard, thanks again. I'm sure your small group is cheering loudly for you right now, shattering a time-space continuum, because we hear it right now outside a week before this airs. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for everything. We'll see you next week. Put in your questions in the Tim Talks box about approval. We're talking about approval all this month. We'll love to hear it. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Take care.